Hello and welcome everybody to the BRA podcast of February 15th. That's the Big Red Arrow channel in case you're a subscriber. And today we're going to be talking about our workflows. We've got some really cool established YouTubers. We've got some people that have different kinds of backgrounds and different kinds of workflows. So it'll be a really interesting conversation. But just to kind of go down the list and everybody say hi. We've got Glenn from CRG. Glenn, how are you?
Hello. Not too
Great.
bad.
Good to hear. Jim from the old school PC. Jim, nice to have
Howdy.
you.
Nice to be here.
All right. And then last but not least, we've got Matt from RetroBits. Matt, how are you?
Good, thanks. Great to be here. Hey, everyone.
Awesome. And I am Paulie Matt. And today we're going to be digging into workflows. So I think one of the things that I think about when any of us kind of go and start filming a video, right, is that we all have a different process, right? Some of us dive right in, some of us do a whole setup, and depending on the content of our videos, some of us have a lot of work to do on research on the front end. So I thought it would be really interesting today to kind of talk about what our approach is to filming and to putting out a video, and to get some different perspectives. So the person I want to jump to first is Glenn.
Okay.
Glenn, why don't you just kind of take us through your process?
Well, my process for the most part, to be perfectly honest with you, is grab this, stick it on a tripod, and hit go. I don't have a lot more prep work than that, to be honest with you, other than maybe just picking out whatever bit of kit it is that I want to work on this week.
Sure. So do you think about lighting at all, or do you have your setup when we watch your videos? You're usually in the same spot, right? You've got an angle that's set up.
Yeah, well, it's just the tripod just sits beside me here, really, just looking down at the desk, just literally down there. I don't know how it appears in the videos. Maybe it does look like it's a bigger space than it actually is, but it is quite small just beside me here. So it is literally just a tripod sat there beside me. You know, I did joke on one of these things previously. If I want to change angles when I move the tripod, well, yeah, I put the tripod here and I move over here. You know, that's the extent of it, to be honest with you. In terms of lighting, it's just the general room lighting that I have in here. And yeah, it is just as straightforward as that.
Well, that's great. I mean, and that's got to be sustainable. I mean, did you when you started filming, right? Did you put any kind of serious thought into behind? All right, well, here's kind of what I'm going for, or was it all about the content? Did you just say, all right, I'm just going to film what I do, and then this is how I'm going to do it?
Well, if you're going right back to when I started this, I mean, I have no prior experience or knowledge or anything of the sort in terms of film making, if you could even call my YouTube whatever film making, you know. But yeah, it was really just, let's make a YouTube channel, let's record something here and just pick it up as we go. I mean, originally my lighting setup wasn't these things on that you can see here on the ceiling. I mean, these lights up here are all individually, you know, controllable. I can dim them, I can change the color temperature of them and whatnot to try and set a scene if I want to. But to be honest with you, when I started out, I had an old cheap floodlight that I sat behind me and pointed it at the ceiling, and the reflection, you know, the deflection of that off the ceiling just lit the scene. It was terrible for shadows and things like that, but
yeah,
you know, it was enough at that time to get me going. No, thanks, Matt.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of a straightforward setup, right? And it's worked for you. I mean, you just hit 10,000 subscribers, right? You've gotten really good responses in your videos. Have you ever gotten any comments, good or bad, about the setup, about the lighting, about if people want to see more, anything like that?
Nothing that I could think of. No, there's nothing there that really jumps out. I mean, I've had some comments before saying that, you know, your video quality is terrible or your audio quality is terrible, but you don't know if people, you know, these are just trolls or whatever. You know, the vast majority of people do seem to watch the videos and enjoy them for what they are.
Love it.
You know,
fantastic.
Sometimes I almost think it's maybe more us, you know, that are making the videos that maybe get more critical about all the little bits and pieces, you know, and putting it together rather than those people
And
watching it.
that's kind of the subtext behind this whole segment is how much
Yeah.
of it is it us, right? That's the kind of the nitpicking, and how much is it about kind of the response?
No, I mean, I'm constantly nitpicking like my quality, you know. And yeah, I know I do come at it from a very laid back point of view. I know some of you guys are a lot more into the nitty gritty of it, but yeah, even at that, you know, I always try to make it as best as I can with what I have here. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
Throughout and over the years, I have got the better equipment. So I've got these better lights. I've got the better camera. I have a better microphone actually in the post on the way to me at the minute. I've had a terrible time with microphones, but hopefully now this will finally get me sorted.
That's great. That's great. Matt, jump into you, man. How about you? What's your process? How do you go about setting up?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit on the other end of the spectrum of my process from Glenn. It's kind of highly scripted in terms of the shots that I'm going to get. But if I back up a little bit, one of the things that's going to become evident as we discuss this today is that everybody's got a different process, and their process that works for them is the best process that someone can have. Glenn turns on his camera, starts recording something, starts talking to it. I kind of agonize about what it is I'm going to talk about before I do it. So the studio that you see here and that you see in all of my videos, some of you don't know, but this is just my living room. It's the back wall of my living room. It's not a permanent installation. So every time I set out to film something, I have to set up the whole environment. So I have a desk on casters, and I roll it out into the middle of the floor, and I start putting everything that I need to on it for that particular shot. And then at the end of the day, when I'm done filming, it all goes back into boxes. It goes back into the corner. So you know, the point I'm trying to make here is that anybody who wants to make a YouTube channel, you don't need a dedicated space, not really. You just need a table that you can work at. If you have a dedicated workbench, awesome. If not, you know, you can make do, and you can still have a successful channel. You can still make content. So that's what I do. I drag out the desk, I set up the stuff, and then I kind of I plan pretty much all of the shots that I'm going to make in advance of making them. So I have, you know, a week or two in advance of starting to film, I've already started to put down bullet points, ideas about what it is that I want to convey. And I have this fear that I'm not going to say everything that I want to. And you can only have one shot to make the video, right? Because as soon as it's published, you can't edit it, you can't add to it. It's fixed in time. And so I really have this fear of forgetting something. And so I take extra diligence to make that script and put all the bullet points in of everything I want to talk about. And then I break it up into scenes and individual shots. Every shot that I'm going to take is in my script. And if you watch my videos, I set up, I have one camera and it's on a tripod that I move it around from shot to shot. So if I'm doing a soldering shot, the camera's right overhead and I'm doing a close up. And if it's a far shot, then I pull it back. And so between each individual shot, I reset the camera and the tripod, and that's how I do it. So it's an involved process, but you know, whatever works for you is the best process. You know.
Well, I think that's a great point, right? Because whatever works for you is all about you being confident that you are putting out content to your standards, right, to your quality. And sounds like for you, right, doing the scripting, doing the shot list is to really make sure that you convey everything that you want to in the video, right, so that you don't want to skip something. But I will
Yeah,
say,
I can't
I gotta say,
remember
like,
it. And
oh yeah.
yeah,
No, so well, watching your videos though, it looks like you're multi-camera, right? It looks like you've got one camera set up on the table view. It looks like one shot you've got top-down view. But I think to the point, right? If you plan kind of effectively, you could just do it with one camera, right?
mm-hmm.
Same thing for me. I've got this guy. I cart that tripod around either on that desk or I haul that and my lighting down to the garage in order to do the other stuff,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
But yeah. Now, did you start out that way? Right, when you first started making videos, how did you evolve to where you are today, or did you kind of really kind of go full on?
Yeah, it kind of started out. I mean, I'm still using the same camera that I had when I made my first video. It's a basic entry level vlogging camera, but it does. I film in 1080p, but it does 4K 30. And so if I'm doing a soldering shot or something, I will switch it to 4K. And then on my 1080p canvas, that gives me a lot of room to zoom in or move around. And so that's kind of a trick I use because I only have one
Very
lens.
smart.
So I do that. But yeah, I've only ever had this one camera, and sometimes I use my cell phone. There's an app on cell phones that lets you tweak the shutter speed a little bit more so than the camera will do. So if you're filming a CRT, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm tired of the scan lines on the CRT, and so I'm using
Yeah.
a mobile app now that lets me really tweak that shutter speed right down to the 10th, which my camera can't do. So, but yeah, I've been using the same setup. I've got a better tripod over the years. This one has a nice feature where it can come out and then go at an angle. So those overhead shots you see are
That's
just the
nice.
tripod at a 90-degree angle to the desk.
Yeah.
And unlike a lot of videos where people's hands come in from the bottom, mine always come in from the top because the camera sits across the desk from me looking down. That's how my
Yeah.
setup is. Yeah.
I think laptop retrospective, same way, right? He's coming in from the top versus going in.
Yeah. The camera would have to be here. The tripod would have to be where I am for it to be. Yeah. So.
Yep. Oh, that's great. Well, transitioning to kind of the more technical side of things, right? If we get to shutter speeds and things like that, Jim, somebody who knows all too well about that stuff and is a kind of a video aficionado, right?
I prefer the term nerd, but yes. I have always had, if I weren't doing most of the stuff that I do, I would love to have been in video production. I first operated a giant TV camera in 7th grade, and it just kind of stuck after that. So I've always been somewhat involved in desktop video in the early 90s, digitizing with early boards, and then in the late 90s getting an actual MJPEG board and doing broadcast quality stuff, but not professionally, but just at home. So I've always been kind of like I've only ever really done serious YouTube videos in complete 4K, like starting as far back as 2016. And that's where I come at in my production process. I mean, I love vintage computing and I love making videos, and it seemed like it was a perfect marriage. I try to have a spreadsheet where I keep all of my ideas for stuff that I feel like I'm a subject matter expert in, so that the amount of research is less. Because if I want to make a video on something I know nothing about, then there's a lot of research time that adds to that. I should also probably clarify early on that I think there's a lot of types of videos that people make. I make the kind where I feel they're more like historical retrospectives or informational or tutorial or something like that. I'm not good with hardware. I'm a software person. So the only hardware video I have is me proclaiming, yes, if you're a complete idiot, you too can put together this badge. And it was all through-hole components, very easy to do. But for the most part, I try to make informational videos, historical videos, that kind of thing. I don't want to misrepresent history. That's a big fear of mine. So I write everything out. I don't necessarily write out everything down to the word. I did use a teleprompter at one point, but I didn't like the way I tried my best to sound natural on it, and I never felt comfortable with it. So now I just essentially have bullet points that I try to follow. And there's a lot of takes. I have looked at something and then looked up the camera and tried to say it and messed up and look back down, look back at my notes, do it again. And there's like an hour of me trying to say the same sentence or two sentences. So there's a lot of editing. Thank goodness digital memory cards are cheap. But so I want to have meticulous control over everything. For me, part of the fun is creating a finely crafted, finished product. And I'm not ashamed to admit that sometimes I go back and rewatch my own videos. Like 6 months later, I'll be like, yeah, let's look at that thing I made again. And I feel really happy about what I've made. Like, this is a perfectly crafted little ball of information, and it looks good, and the shots are great, and my face isn't too magenta or too green, and everything's like fantastic. Now, there is a huge downside to this, and maybe we can transition. Maybe that's an interesting point to transition to. The huge downside to this is that it takes me forever to produce a video. And like Matt, I have a very limited space. You see this white table behind me. This is it. And it's also part of my workspace. So I'm constantly shuffling stuff around. This is also in my basement is my computer room and also my home theater. And I can't, if people want to watch a movie, I can't have my lights and my camera and everything else all set up. So I'm constantly breaking that down and moving it somewhere else. And that's frustrating, and that adds to the time. The point I'm making is that it takes me so long to make a video. I only come out with like 4 a year. And that bothers me. And I would really like to figure out in 2024 and beyond if there's some sort of a middle ground where I could try to relax my own production standards to come out with more stuff more often, because it's somewhat irritating to say part one of a 4-part series and like months and months go by before the next part comes out. That is not how you grow a channel.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's not, I mean, again, I'm happy with the end result, but it has massive downsides, and that's one
So
of the
there's the
reasons we're talking.
trade-off, yeah,
That's the
between
trade-off.
processes, yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
trying to figure out ways to improve that.
So, I mean,
one
you
last thing.
touched...
One last thing. Sorry, one last thing. In terms of overheads, I did used to move the one camera around, and then when I upgraded, my old camera still did 4K, but had terrible autofocus, but has great manual focus. So I've actually mounted it to the ceiling, going down on the table that I do overhead shots on, so I don't have to worry about that part. At least and it always looks funny. I've got a camera hanging from the ceiling, but
That's nice.
But it's nice. So if you ever upgrade and you have a second camera, you could do that for your overheads.
That's great. I mean, I think you've touched on a couple of things that kind of constantly come up with, which is, right, like where we still feel that we need to optimize, right? Because I think a lot of what we do, like Glenn, you come out with a video a month, maybe more, right? Two a month.
Yeah, I try to get. Well, I would have tried to get them out weekly. It's probably more fortnightly now, to be honest. Just because I think as my channel's developed, I've tried to get into more complicated projects, and just working in here of an evening, 5 days a week even, it's hard to get some of those projects knocked out in a week. So it has to slip to the fortnightly release schedule.
Yeah. And so I think optimizing for kind of what we, and Jim, I've got the same issue, right? Like some of my favorite projects that I like to turn out, I've been working on one for 6 months now, and it just hasn't come together, right? Because I keep making it bigger, and it keeps kind of evolving. And then so I've been thinking about like, well, what can I do on a weekly or fortnightly basis to just get content out, right? And to be happy with what it is and not feel like I'm compromising what I do or the content on my channel, or just to have some shorts out that's something quirky, something like that. But no, I think that's kind of a good thing. So Matt, what about you? Are you happy with your release schedule? Would you like to optimize there at all?
Obviously, I would love to have more releases more quickly. Once a week would be ideal, I think. But I've been, for the last 3 years, I've been trying to get one out every 2 weeks. It's just it's time consuming to do it the way I do it, where you script and bullet point everything in advance, and then film each individual shot with a different camera setup, and then editing doubles the time. So I would love to get stuff out more often, and I've tried to optimize the process a little bit in terms of, earlier on, I would write everything that I would say, and I do a heavy amount of voiceover. Later, I started moving to a process more like Jim's, where I just make sure everything I want to say is in a bullet point, and I have that somewhere at hand, so I know to make sure I mention it when I'm doing live filming. So I'm getting better at filming things and speaking live, which saves a lot of time in scripting and in voiceover later. So that's been good. It still hasn't gotten me to the magical one a week, though. I'm still doing it every other week, because the time commitment's just too much. And I don't think any of us are thinking really we're doing this as a way to grow it into a business. We're all doing it for fun, as a hobby. And if you try to crunch it for too long, 3 or 4 years of trying to maintain a hard schedule of one a week is just going to burn people out. If you're spending that much time. So I just want to keep it fun. So
that's good.
I gave up on a regular schedule an awfully long time ago. I think maybe I had 2 videos in 2 weeks, and then that was it. I was like, no, I'll just get them out when they're done. Actually, that brings me to a question I want to ask both Matt and Glenn. What is it about the regular release schedule? Like, are you doing that because you are trying to grow the channel with regular releases, or are you trying to do it as a motivational factor? Like, if I don't put a deadline on myself, I won't finish. Like, why do you try to adhere to one, every week or every 2 weeks?
I suppose.
Why don't you take it, Glenn?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I suppose for me, it's more a case of, I sort of use YouTube almost as an excuse to play with all this stuff in here.
That's valid.
So I'm out here doing stuff, I'll just stick the camera on anyway, and we'll record whatever it is I'm working on this week and make a video out of it. If it does turn out that it's a simple repair on something, say, then and if I can get it done within a week from the last video, yep, I'll try and get that done and get it pushed out on the Sunday release. Or I usually release a video on a Sunday at 2 p.m. here in the UK. But if it's something that does drag on to a couple of weeks, then yeah, that'll be the release date. It'll be fortnightly, weekly, or whatever it is. It just depends on the project that we're working on. But there's nothing there. But I'm not driving that from a point of view of I need to make a video. I'm more driving it from a point of view of what's the next project that I want to do. Because I do want to work on these machines here, and so yeah. Sorry, maybe didn't explain that very well.
No, I think it did. It sounds like you've got enough material. Forgive me for paraphrasing. It sounds like you've got enough material to go ahead and release roughly one every 2 weeks, and you just you sounds like you schedule them based on what you're working on.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, one thing for me is I'm pretty much one thing at a time sort of guy. I know some of you are working on multiple projects at any one given time, but one or two maximum for me. I want to start something and see it through to completion. I'm currently working on an old Amstrad 2086, something right up your street probably, Jim. But it is a slightly bigger project, so I did manage to push that to the side for a couple of hours one night while I was working on something on one of my Amigas there, which was the video that was released just earlier today.
To jump in real quick.
Yep.
I think something that happens to me quite often is what I call YouTube block. But it's basically I'm working on a project and I get a new machine in or buy something on eBay or my focus shifts and I'm like, I want to play with this, right? I want to play with this. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, you can't because you should film it. Right? Like if it's a machine that I'm going to clean up and restore and things like that before I put it on my desk and want to play with it, I'm like, no, you should film this, but you can't film it because you're currently working on another project. And so I have this, and Glenn, I do the same thing. I do one at a time, and it's not necessarily because of focus. It's about capability. Like I've chosen to shoot in full kind of like 4K. That camera will do ProRes. My editing stuff, I can't have. Like I've got a 4 terabyte drive in that thing that would fill up too quickly for even 2 projects worth of video, right? So I have to do one at a time, and my computer won't handle saving and editing like 2 things at a time. So I'm forced to be able to like, nope, one project, and then I have to put off my enjoyment of just actually using this retro stuff before that.
That is how it goes. Yeah. Usually it's the newest thing that I get in that becomes the next video because I want to mess with it. And then,
yeah.
That's just how it goes, isn't it? That Amstrad that I referenced there that I am working on, I maybe got that 2 years ago. And I've been wanting to get to it, and I've been wanting to get to it, but then it's, look, shiny thing on eBay, I'm going to buy that and play with that now instead.
Yep.
So it's an interesting part of... Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I just wanted to say to your question, the release schedule was, for me, very trying to get very aggressive growth for the first couple of years. And so I was hitting that 2-week target just because I needed to. I felt like I needed to. And then later it became, I want to keep the release velocity up for my patrons. And now in 2024, I'm going to dial things back a little bit just because I'm trying to prevent any signs of fatigue or burnout. So I'm just going to have to go at a pace that I feel like going, and it might be slower, but that's what it's going to be. What it is. I'm not chasing that aggressive growth anymore.
I mean, you've hit about I haven't checked, but I think you're past me now. I think you hit about 21 or 22,000 subscribers. That's a good starting ramp, I think. Like I don't think you need to be in massive growth mode.
It slowed down so much too in the last 6 months. No matter what I do, it doesn't seem to grow like it did in the previous years. So I'm taking that as an excuse not to push too hard. Also,
that's fair.
Yeah.
I brought up something. I was thinking of something earlier. Glenn talking about how he does his work and he works on one thing at a time. I tend to be acquire. I mean, I try not to acquire a lot because I'm pretty much at capacity in this house. But sometimes I'll acquire something, or I'll discover something, or I'll think of a new idea. I have a lot of stuff going on in the background in terms of research and discovery. But once I start a video, that is it. Like, I do one video at a time. I'm definitely not filming some part and then the next week I film something for some different video and the first one's not finished yet. No. When I finally decide to start making a video, set up the lights and set up the little product stage for the product photography and the camera, that's it. It's like start to finish. So that's how I do my stuff. The problem is working up the motivation to pick the one that's the most fully researched and the one I have the most desire for, and then go. I've also found that starting a multi-part series locks you into that series. Like, I have found that I really wanted to work on something else the past month, something cool and new that I discovered. But that would be weird to put out part one of some series and then, here's some random video about something else. So I now feel locked into that series and I have to trudge through all the way to the end. And I'm sure I'll love the rest of it when I'm done. But it's hard to get motivated to do that when you've got something else, cool and shiny sitting in front of you.
That actually reminds me of, go ahead, Matt.
Well, I want to pose a kind of an open-ended question to the group that we could discuss for a bit. If you think about a continuum, right, of on one side of it is you're doing things because either you want to grow your channel or you want to please the viewers, right? And on the other side of it, it's you're doing things because you want to do them, right? Like I'd be interested to know where each of us fall in that. And that's probably dynamic. It probably changes week to week, month to month, right, year to year. But when I think of it, right, I'm probably center, but still leaning towards growth mode a little bit, because for me, I want people to watch my videos, right? Like for example, if I'm going to be doing these projects anyway, but if the time it takes for me to film them, right, and do this stuff, if nobody wants to watch them, then okay, I'll just stop filming them. I'll still do the projects, right? But I'll just stop doing that. So for me, I'm pretty a young channel, right? It's only been less than a year, maybe 6 months, and so for me, I'm still leaning towards that kind of, all right, well, I want to make sure I'm pleasing the YouTube algorithm by thinking about trying to do something to hit a release schedule, right? So that I get a base of people that actually enjoy kind of watching this, and YouTube tries to push me. But I'm not going to do something that, like, I'm not going to just start doing shorts on random stuff just in order to get a regular release schedule and views. So my kind of question for the group is where are each of us today on that continuum?
I make videos that I want to see. I don't make videos for an external audience. Probably why my channel is limited to 20,000 subscribers. But I make the kinds. It's the same reason I've done other projects. Like I'm known in some places for being the co-founder of Moby Games. I started all of that 20 odd years ago because I wanted to see that, and it was not there. So that's the same way I approach my videos. I make videos that I want to see, and then I try to fit the thumbnail, the title, and possibly some editing suggestions into what the general consensus is for what like others might want to see. It's probably not a good way to make videos if you want to grow. But if I didn't do it for me, I wouldn't make them at all. So,
but Jim, it's a little more than that for you, right? Because you just said that if like you want to put out a series and you want to work on something in the middle of that series, you're not going to work on that thing. So it's probably a little bit more on the pleasing the viewer side of things, isn't it?
This is why I'm conflicted. This is not And I want to know what Matt has to say here.
It's similar to Jim. I make content first and foremost about things that I want to do, projects that I want to undertake. Now, there's always a backlog of projects. I have like almost 100 things written down that I want to make, so you can only do one at a time. I don't do multiples at a time. And then second of all, I take the thing that I want to do at that moment, and I make a video that I want to watch 6 months or 12 months down the road. I do, just like Jim, I make the videos for myself. I don't choose them for an audience. However, that said, when I'm picking something out of the list of backlog projects, I'm like, this one I want to do and this one I want to do, but this one's going to play better because it has a bigger audience than this thing. And so some
Sure.
things sit forever on the pile and they never get the attention they deserve because the audience for that thing is very small. And so I never get around to it. And I feel bad about that, but if I want to do two things equally, I'm going to pick the one that plays better. It's just how it is.
How about you, Glenn?
Yeah, pretty much the same, to be honest with you. I try to make the types of videos that I like to watch, if that makes sense. So, I mean, I will be binging Adrian's Digital Basement or Gadget UK, things like that, hardware-focused stuff where they're just tinkering with whatever old bit of equipment that happens to be that week. And, I enjoy watching those videos, so that's what I want to try and put out there myself. Because I enjoy tinkering on those bits of hardware myself, but I suppose I maybe try to come about it my own way, just my sort of laid back approach to it.
I think it sounds like most of us kind of start there, right? That we all start with wanting to do the thing because it probably comes from our just love of, like, none of us went and said, hey, I want to create a YouTube channel. What should it be? And then landed on this. It sounds like we all had this kind of passion and then wanted to kind of start filming that. But
well,
Glenn,
if I could jump in there.
Yeah,
when I
go ahead.
first started this, I had this idea in my head that I'm going to start a YouTube channel and I'm going to do game reviews, because at that particular point in time I was totally addicted to GameSec, the YouTube channel.
Yeah, I love
which is still a great
GameSec.
channel, and I still watch it. It's brilliant.
Okay, Joe does great work. I'm with you there.
Joe's fantastic.
Yeah,
but I quickly sort of discovered that while I do enjoy playing games, I don't really enjoy talking about them that much. So the hardware side of it, I enjoy tinkering with that as well. But it may be easier for me just to express that within a video, if that makes sense.
So Glenn, at what points in your whole process of making a video, whether it's choosing to a piece of hardware, choosing a project, or your thumbnails or things like that, at what points do you think of either the YouTube algorithm, your subscribers, or possibly new people that would want to subscribe?
I try to do as little thinking about the YouTube algorithm as possible.
It's probably healthy.
Because it's, it's
Glenn is my new hero.
Yeah.
It's our spirit animal.
I mean, in terms of thinking about the subscriber or the new subscribers, well, I suppose we've maybe spoke about that a little before on previous episodes of this, where there's been the feeling from my point of view that I've been pushed down the Amiga road.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love working on my Amigas. I really do.
Are you happy I didn't call you Mr. Amiga?
Yes, unlike Lee did last time.
Do you feel pigeonholed? Do you feel like you can't, if you work on something else, people won't like it or you won't like it? Do you feel trapped in Amiga repairs and tinkering?
To an extent. I'm very conscious that I would say the majority of my core audience are probably there for the Amiga side of things. But I have done quite a bit on the old PC side of stuff, DOS, Windows side of stuff before, and I'm very conscious that I haven't done a lot of that, especially last year. And, I suppose there I am thinking about those viewers and wanting to get something out there for them. But equally, I love tinkering with those old computers, and I haven't had one in front of me for a while. So, that's why I pulled out the Amstrad there and started working on it. Yeah. Plus, to be honest with you, a lot of the big Amiga projects that I had, they're all sort of wrapped up or wrapping up. There's not a lot more I have there, major project-wise, at the minute.
That's good. So we've talked a lot about kind of our process. A question I've got is, if we think about kind of like the videos, and unfortunately, like, this isn't something that I could go look on everybody's channels and see, because give us an example of the video that you put the most work into that you got the least payoff from a subscribership basis, right? I'd love to hear some examples. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. It's only because it's a sore point. Forgive me if I'm monopolizing the conversation. I am not making this up, 3 years of on and off thinking about it, research, planning, etc., and 3 months of work, setup, shooting, examples, the whole thing, spending money on acquiring examples or whatever for what I consider one of my finest works, which is so ridiculous because it's such a niche thing. How to determine if your software collectible has original or counterfeit shrink wrap. And
that is my favorite video of yours, by the way. I love that video.
Thank you. I wish it had more than 4,000 views. I put a ton of work into it, and it flew like a lead balloon. Even within the big box PC collecting community, which is who I originally created it for.
Yeah.
And I had a unique perspective on this based on my background. I'm also a software collector. You can't really see it, but some of these shelves these shelves have all collectible software on them, and I've got some more in another location. I felt like a subject matter expert on this. I felt uniquely qualified to do it. I put all this work in. I have some amazing, I'll call them glamour shots of slider footage going past a shrink wrapped box and things like that. And I was so utterly proud of it, and it didn't do hardly at all what I thought it would do, and I was somewhat devastated, and I didn't make anything for 6 months. And that is also, I think, the journey of a YouTuber. Clint has spoken about this. David Murray of 8-Bit Guy has spoken about this, where you put a ton of work into something and it does not fly, or at least have the reception that you thought it did. You were super enthusiastic. You felt you did a fantastic job. The video's amazing. And I think that that's something we will all encounter, and I think we will all have to figure out our own way of getting past it. I definitely don't shoot for the moon that much anymore, but I try to go as far as is reasonable. I still meticulously do my camera, my setup, my lighting, my planning, and everything else. But I don't think I'll ever obsess over some final product that much anymore, because if I can't guarantee results, then I don't want to be hurt like that again.
Yeah, so, that's terrible and unfair. I think we've all felt that kind of crushing defeat before, but I don't think any of us have put that much time and effort into a single video to have.
And in retrospect, it was a bit silly to try to put so much time and effort into that. I think another part that really hurt is that I released it right at a time when the video game collecting market was in the bubble, 2 years ago, where stuff was selling for ludicrous prices, like $1 million for a sealed Super Mario Brothers. And I was like, this is, not only have I been working on this for the longest time, this is absolutely the perfect time to finish it up and get it out. And it still didn't help. And
sometimes the YouTube algorithm just decides it is not your time for this channel to be promoted, regardless of the content you make. It might be perfectly timed. It might be to an audience that is receptive, and YouTube might not put it in front of that audience because your 6 months till your next big hit isn't up yet. It's you have no control over that. So.
Well, I'll take it, I suppose. Now I want to hear what everyone else worked on that didn't pan out to their expectations.
Yeah.
What about you,
Matt?
Matt?
I've talked about it before. There's the ones that you put the most effort into often aren't the ones that fly. And some of the documentary style ones where I've done a lot of research and put together something that I was proud of that hadn't been done before, they did okay. They got single digit thousands of views, right? Did okay. And then I put together a gaming video that was mostly gaming footage and me talking about it kind of live, and that did 10 times better. And so that was like a throwaway video. Well, not throwaway. I'm proud of it, but it wasn't anywhere. There was no research. It was just, here you go. But the one that I worked the hardest at, they none of them have done well compared to something that I just threw together. So that's how it goes.
I enjoyed your RIP graphics video so much that I downloaded it and have it on my local hard drive in case something ever happens to your channel.
Thanks. That is one that I'm proud of. The RIP one, the Laserdisc subtitling one. Those kind of things that don't have an analog anywhere else on YouTube. But I guess
that's the other thing. It's unique content, which was also such a surprise to me. Like, there's no one else that I know of producing. There are lots of videos producing on how to rewrap and fake your stuff, but none explaining how to determine if it's correct or not. And I felt like unique, like what host Snorkers loves to do whenever he identifies a unique content opportunity. He has a giant rotating ZX Spectrum head of his going unique content with this huge echo chamber, which is utterly hilarious. Yeah, you think you create a unique thing and it still doesn't pan out.
Well, it'll be there forever, and people can find it if they want to find it. It's it's done. But it does, like you said, it does make me think twice about doing something research intensive and niche again in the future.
Yeah. Oh well.
How about you, Glenn?
Oh, my channel is a wash of crushing disappointments. The one that came to mind, I suppose, when you asked the question, you're going back quite a few years though. I did a Game Boy refurb, but the whole job got it working again. Did the backlight mod to the screen and whatnot. Now, probably are going back 3 years, maybe a bit longer to that. So my channel was maybe about 5,000 subscribers at the time, maybe a bit less. But I think that video still only has a couple hundred views. It was just, it hurt that one a wee bit. It stuck with me, that one.
Yeah.
But, live and learn, move on to the next job, move on to the next project.
I think that's it, right? I think, I haven't learned my lesson. Well, kind of. So the one that actually made my channel take off was initially a flop. It was a project that I'd done over the course of probably a couple years, and it was reverse engineering a battery, a ThinkPad battery. And so because they have these controller chips and they didn't make them anymore and they were proprietary to IBM and all that kind of stuff. And so literally I did a whole video of me just creating a battery from scratch, right? 3D printing a case, soldering this, tacking the cells, coding the chip, making the circuit board, right? Testing it. And I did the whole thing. And so it was about 2 years in the making. I spent about 4 or 5 months on the video, and I released it, and it went nowhere. I got like 62 views in the first 3 or 4 months. But then all of a sudden, about 8 months in, it just took off, and I got about 3,000 subscribers out of it over the course of a week.
Wow. Wonder what happened.
Exactly. I had no idea. And then so I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe this is just how it works, right? And then so I did another, and it wasn't like it wasn't like as intensive as that one. And then that one just went nowhere, right? It got about 1,000 views, something like that. And I was just like, all right, well, maybe I just have to wait 6 months. Nope. Nothing. But
I've never seen that before. 6 months later. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the feedback that I gotten, and so I was just kind of like a freak thing, and so like I am now 6 months into a very intensive project that I think is super cool, right? But I have no idea how it's going to do, and I'm trying to like hedge myself, right, to be like, it's going to get 10 views and that's going to be fine, right? like it's going to be okay when I finally release this thing.
Here's a top tip for anybody who's aspiring to be a new YouTube content creator. Don't release your magnum opus as a new channel. It's not going to catapult your channel. You're not going to go viral right off the bat. It's not going to catapult your channel. Save it until you've grown your channel a bit to make your defining piece of work. That's my advice.
It's a good call. It's good advice.
That might actually be what happened to me, because I think when I released it, I may have only had about 5,000 or 6,000 subscribers at the time. So that if we're talking about the shrink wrap thing. So
yeah,
that is possible. Also, advice I'm hearing, which I'm not sure is good or bad advice. In order to be a happy YouTuber, you have to be a pessimistic YouTuber. This will not do well. And then when it does, oh, I'm happy.
Oh dear.
Again, Glenn is our spirit animal.
No, no, just making a joke.
Well, what was I going to say? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I think it's the video that you almost put the least amount of effort into.
It happens. It
just takes
totally
off,
does.
it just
Yeah,
goes.
about-
YouTube just to show you.
How about some examples of those? Does anybody have any examples that they just threw something together and it took off?
The biggest video on my channel is it's not a let's play, but it's just a Sega Master System. Here's my favorite 16-bit arcade games. Here are the ports to the Sega Master System, and I'm sort of just talking about them as I play them.
Yeah.
There's not much research in it, and that's by far the biggest video on my channel by at least 100%. So,
Jem, you've gotten some VHS videos that have absolutely. One of them's close to 1 million views right now.
Yeah, that damn thing. So I created that because, well, first of all, for decades, people have not understood interlaced video properly, and 99.9, I'm not making, I mean, I wish I were making this number up. 99.9% of all VHS uploads to YouTube are wrong. They're all 30p or 25p, if you're in a PAL country, and that's not correct. Videotape actually contains 50 or 60 different fields, different moments in time on it. So deinterlacing properly is like, that's the windmill that I've been charging for the last 20 years. I made a video in 2016, mostly to help my friends who had asked me, hey, your videos on YouTube look great. Why do yours look like actual videotape and mine look like garbage? And then I thought, okay, I'll make a little video out of it, meaning I'll put a little bit of production into it. So a little bit of titles and a little bit. Okay, so it looks like I put a lot of time into it. I actually didn't. Because there's a giant stretch in the middle, which is just me talking. The whole video is completely unscripted. I even say that in the first minute. This is completely unscripted. And 1 million views. It turns out that I stumbled onto, at the time, this is not true today, but it was then, one of the more popular search engine terms, how to transfer VHS to digital, or even just how to transfer VHS. And guess what? That was the beginning part of my title, how to transfer VHS something something. So back in 2016, people found videos mostly by search. That is not true today. In 2023, the pendulum flipped, and YouTube themselves reported that the number one way people are discovering videos are simply browsing around on their timeline on their phone. That's why thumbnail generation is super important now, because that's the number one, and title second, because that's how people are actually going to find your views now. I don't know how to optimize for a visual audience. I'm not a visual graphic person. I'm very much a technical person. So this is a whole other discussion we don't have time for, which is thumbnails. But so something I did on a lark turned out to be super popular, and then I did a polished version of that in February of 2023, because software had changed and people were asking, I just want to do one click, record, stop, and have it be perfect. So that's what that tutorial is all about. And it uses OBS and etc. In both
and
videos,
that one got 500,000 views too.
Like I said, probably, and it's probably the audience of the first video asking me about when am I going to make an updated version for 2023. In both videos, you may notice my pet peeve is hammered on relentlessly in the middle. Here are fields. This is what fields are. One of the videos even takes a picture and spreads it apart so you can see, oh, look, there's two different images in there. And yet it's somehow still doesn't matter.
This is going to boil your blood, Jim, but when I see like a 1-minute clip on YouTube of some old ad or something recorded from VHS,
yes,
I like to see those lines because it reminds me of, that it's coming from that source.
It's nostalgic.
There is an entire nostalgia aesthetic. My son will listen to some lo-fi beats that are styled, and they'll have record crackle and scratching and noise on them overlaid. And it's very anachronistic because the music he's listening to was never released on a record. So why is that there? And it turns out it's just sort of an aesthetic. Again, topic for another time, when your childhood is now some artistic aesthetic that young people use to evoke a certain mood or theme, and not necessarily a time period. Also held to historians and archivists such as myself, but we don't have time to discuss that. So yeah, that. and Clint has gone on record as saying that, he wishes he doesn't have to do the Sims videos anymore, but those are the ones that always consistently deliver monetary, return. So
Yeah,
that's
I
why
think
he
it
still does
changes
those.
things.
Yeah.
It changes things when you're doing YouTube and you've got your livelihood attached to it. You know, it probably changes your thought process.
Yeah. But so topic for a future video, YouTubers who hate their own creations.
Well, I mean, we had a lot of YouTubers recently who have, I don't know, some probably it was for show, but quote unquote called it quits or are kind of backing off a little bit. And they probably came from a time. Yeah, exactly. It's a that's right. It's a no YouTube January thing.
I like how they wait until January when all the ad revenue is down. Then they announce that they're they got their December ad revenue in. Now it's time to leave. But
it's a zero effort video that is guaranteed clicks.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we got it. Yeah, I think this has been pretty good. We got through a bit of content. I agree. I think there's still some stuff that I'd love to touch on, which is kind of the post process, right? How much time goes into editing? How much time goes into thumbnails? We don't have that kind of time today, but I think I think this was. I think we touched on some really good points. Any final thoughts? Any final thoughts before we go from each of you about any YouTubers that are looking to kind of have a setup or create a new channel? Any suggestions? Any tips?
Well, you can start before you're ready. That's always a tip I tell people. You don't have to wait till you have the best equipment or you're prepared as a public speaker. Just start making video. You're going to get better over time. You don't need a dedicated space for it, and you don't need dedicated equipment. Just start making content if that's what you want to do.
That's great, and you're never going to know. You're never going to know what's going to take off and what's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started with a 720p webcam. Then very quickly moved to a mobile phone that was nowhere near as good as the image that this one could capture. And onto a cheap Nikon camera that I got secondhand in a local store. And finally now onto the Sony. But,
what are you using right now?
You don't... Sorry?
What are you using right now? You just showed us your main camera.
Yep. That's a series of mirrors. No, it's a Logitech webcam.
Oh, sorry, I'm using a webcam as well, but I'm green. I'm like the Hulk over here, so yours is much better.
I'm not sure what model this is, but it was Dave Velociraptor. He sold me it. It was his previous one that he used for their podcast. He upgraded, so I got his hand-me-downs.
Yeah. So equipment doesn't matter too much if you're just starting out. Just make videos.
Absolutely.
Even if you have a green webcam.
Yeah. Don't. Matt is green because his background is blue and his shirt is blue and he's got auto white balance on.
Yeah. There you go.
It's the default settings on the webcam.
That's right. My advice would be do not do what I did. Do not put so much front end effort into it that you will inevitably set yourself up for failure or disappointment. If you want to get into making YouTube videos, you have to be comfortable presenting information. So I think and as for someone who has traditionally been an introvert, this is the toughest advice for me to give personally, but your first video should literally be any recording device, you talking, your face on camera, and say what you feel is important to say, and then upload it. And if you can get past that barrier, then you'll be fine.
Sound advice.
Yeah.
From people who've been at it for quite a while. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. It was a great panel. We've got lots more to talk about. So if you haven't subscribed, please do. There's more of this. There's past videos that you can take a look at that we've referenced before. But Jim, Matt, Glenn, pleasure to chat with you guys as always. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks very much.
Very good. Thanks.
See ya.